don't see a circumstance where anybody can say, I'm going to you up to their wife when they're trying to like say that they need space. That's like not potentially abusive.
So that's a very cherry-picked quote of I'm gonna you up. They obviously continued talking, and then first of all, there's never been any physical abuse that's claimed on either side, and secondly, he let her leave.
So let me make a little bit stronger claims now. Consistently throughout this conversation, you have attributed intentions to the wife. All right? All right. Steven Crowder. Okay, so what exactly is your position on that video we watched? Just clarified as to the best of your ability.
The ring video.
Yes, the ring video of them on their like patio outside.
I think my official position on the ring video is that I think it's a situation where two people were in an incredibly stressful situation. One was going in to give birth, and one was going in to have major chest surgery. And his wife flipped out, called him an abuser, drove him crazy, fled the home, and then divorced him a couple months later. So I don't really want to bash either one in this situation, but I think that he is completely not abusive.
He's completely not abusive. Okay. So you made a strong claim there when you said try to make him crazy. Can you, where did that happen?
I mean, I don't think she's trying to do it on purpose, but I think this is my genuine take. People say I'm like lying. I'm not lying. I'm just saying this is what I see in that video. Is I see, you know, I see her. I'm not saying she's trying to drive him crazy, but she is frustrating him because he's trusting her as his wife, and she's saying, no, I'm going legal. I'm starting to call you an abuser. And she doesn't engage with the conversation. He's clearly trying to work something out, and she just says, Steven, no, I'm not doing this right now. I'm leaving, and I'll be back when I'm back.
So when you say she's trying to go legal, to my knowledge, at the time, he isn't aware of any legal process that's happening there. There isn't.
Right. Yes, right. I'm not saying necessarily, but like, you know, I may as well. Everybody's seen my family, so I may as well say it. I've seen this happen firsthand, where a man trusts his wife. The wife gets overwhelmed. She turns on him, and then, even though she doesn't really mean to do it, she starts accusing him of abuse because she feels guilty, and she's projecting it onto him and saying he's trying to make her feel guilty by abusing her. I think that's what's going on there.
Why?
Because nothing he says indicates any abuse.
So I think it can imply some kind of, so it's weird to me because you're, in one sense, you're saying something I actually agree with that's rather accurate. It was this incredibly stressful series of circumstances. Incredibly stressful. Now,
I would say this is where a marriage either is the strongest or breaks down.
Absolutely.
This kind of a situation.
However, right, with that framework in mind, couldn't she have made a mistake, maybe felt like a series, even if I were to agree with you that nothing that Steven Crowder did was abusive at all, couldn't we come to a kind of agreement that what Steven Crowder did, what Steven Crowder did, his wife might have been able to perceive as abusive in those high stakes, stressful scenarios? Honestly, she could have honestly interpreted it as abusive because, like, I don't know, she's pregnant and she feels like he should be more concerned for her well-being with the stress on top of it. And so she's thinking like, hey, this is kind of abusive behavior because I know relationships. I know relationships. Sometimes we say things, sometimes we say things we don't mean, right? And even if I agree with you, nothing abusive happened. Okay. Why couldn't she have just been like, I believe this was abusive? Why is it projection?
I guess you could say, but I don't think she thinks that he is an abusive person. I don't think because they both agreed that they're gonna have this like traditional Christian marriage, right?
Yep.
They both agreed to it. Like they were abstinent before, right? So they're both on the same page. So everything he's saying, you know, everything he's saying does hold up to that. All he's saying is like, hey, I thought we agreed to do this together. So could she be irrational? I guess what I would say is her behavior shows a sign of like a level of immaturity that I don't think she thinks he's abusive. I just think she's trying to get rid of the guilt. I guess that's what I'm saying.
So where me and you are agreeing is in that stressful scenario thing. We can't really interpret fully what the context of this is. And so
yeah.
In that we can agree, but I don't know how from there you're getting to he was not abusive. I think the most that you're going to be able to say is that we don't know whether or not either one of them is abusive. Potentially, she could be abusive, right? We don't know, right?
Well, you can look at their behavior after. Okay, so let's just say this is a stressful scenario, but it's we're now 2 years after this video, right? So it's no longer a stressful situation in the sense that she is in the same house as her ex-husband or whatever. I don't know. I think they're divorcing right now. I'm not sure if they're quite divorced yet. And this, she gave birth, so it's 2 years later. She's not in the same stressful situation. She's leaking videos about him, trying to make him look bad. All he said, he made a statement about the divorce that was a perfectly mature statement, and he said, I wish to keep this private for the sake of the kids.
Well, no. He made He made a very loaded statement. If I remember his statement correctly, actually, yeah. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. His original statement was that we are going through a divorce. Me and my wife are going through a divorce. Unfortunately, in the state of Texas, it's one side can
no fault.
Yeah, no fault divorce, right? And so she can just do it and she can say whatever, and I don't need to be a part of it. And it's not my kid's fault. That's what he wanted to stress a lot, and that it was his wife's idea, not his. It was his wife that was pushing it, right? Not him. And he then went on to talk about how important like marriage is and stuff like that. So the painting of this is that his wife is breaking up a happy family, that where he kept saying, I wanted to make things work. I didn't want to break it up because I think I remember him explicitly saying, I know how detrimental like a split household can be for children, right? Maybe, but either way, that's along with his, exactly. And so he's putting a lot on his wife there. He's saying like, she is breaking up a family that could be, together, could be united, and could raise happy, healthy children, and she's instead choosing not to. That's a pretty tough claim, especially in conservative circles, no?
Well, I understand that she feels the need to defend herself because she feels guilty for doing that, but he's right, I think, to say that, like, I don't think anything's loaded about that. She did file for the divorce. It was not his choice. And I do think that no-fault divorce doesn't make any sense, frankly.
We could talk about whether or not no-fault divorce doesn't make any sense. I feel like that's a little...
Even...
Yeah.
Sorry,
I feel like that's a little bit on the side.
But what about that is loaded? I mean, he's just saying what she did. She is breaking it up.
Well, the problem is just saying it's her. The way that that's loaded is it implies that she is breaking up something that could work, that could be healthy for her children, but instead she's like very selfishly deciding, I don't care what's good for the children. I'm deciding what's good for me, even though what's good, like this could work, right? The implication is that she's jumping ship when the ship isn't even sinking. It just needs a little bit of patchwork, and then their children can live a happy life, which is that's a pretty steep claim in conservative, to my knowledge. Like, conservative people consider raising children and like happy, healthy children to be like a number one priority. And if you don't do that for your children, you're like a failure as a parent, as a person, really.
Yeah, I can see that, and I do think, I think he feels betrayed because she did agree to marriage, and marriage is till death do us part. And I think it's a betrayal of that vow. It is wrong to break that vow. However, I don't think he's right to say that it's completely her choice, because I think she obviously has psychological problems that potentially, I would say, impeded her from ever truly getting married in the first place, which is why they should consider annulment, which is saying that they never got married in the first place. But I don't believe in I agree with him. I don't believe in divorce. How can you break a vow? How can you choose to break a vow that you made for
Wait, you don't believe in divorce or no-fault divorce?
Well, I don't believe in divorce at all as a concept. I don't understand. If you make a vow to be with somebody till death do you part, how can you break that vow? Either you didn't understand what you were doing when you took the vow, or the vow is like forever. Otherwise, marriage means nothing.
Well, can people not change and grow apart?
It says through sickness and through health.
But not,
everything.
yeah, it's what I'm saying. You can, but then you can become an entirely different person. You can have a life-changing, multiple life-changing experiences, some epiphanies and stuff like that. Maybe you guys could just grow apart.
Well, then marriage doesn't mean anything. You have to be there with that person no matter what they go through. Right?
I mean, I like your argument here. I really do, because it was a conversation I've had in my past relationships as well. Like, what does commitment really mean? How much commitment is too much commitment? Like, for example, my ex, she suffered from alcoholism, and it's like, if let's say that me and her were married, do I have to see through to her getting help for her alcoholism for the rest of her life, even if she doesn't get any better? Let's say if she was physically abusive, right? Where does the line lie for marriage? How far does it go? And that's going to be interpreted person to person, I think.
Well, I would say, and I think this is just natural law. I would say, of course, I look, this is what always happens. This is why I call myself a centrist. The left wing turns marriage into whatever, you can divorce whenever, whatever. The right wing turns marriage into a jail cell. Like, you're locked in with this person forever, no matter what they do. Of course, that's not reasonable. Of course.
Okay, well, if you say, sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No.
Okay. What I would say is, of course, if you vow to be with somebody forever, of course, your spouse can fail in those vows, but you still chose that person. So you may be separated, but you're still married. You can't marry another person unless you revisit the marriage in the first place and you say, was this person actually psychologically healthy enough to get married? Did they understand what they were signing up for? I think those are the only two options. What do you think?
I think I disagree, but I feel like that would become the topic then if we were to discuss it. Like, I feel like this is a whole nother, conversation to have. I feel like we see eye to eye on some of the critical points.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So I'd want to keep it there and go back to Steven Crowder if we could. Okay.
So, I certainly am not one of those people who think that people get, I just want to say, I don't believe people go to hell for getting a divorce or whatever. It's extremely common. It's not even really a religious argument. I just think it makes sense, but whatever.
Is there people who believe you go to hell for getting divorced? I didn't even think of that.
Well, I'm Catholic. It used to be considered a mortal sin, which means that you break your relationship with God, and you will go to hell if you die. But it's not considered a mortal sin anymore, and it's obviously not. Whatever. But
okay. I didn't know that, actually. I genuinely didn't know that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It used to be considered like a very, very serious problem.
Which is weird because I used to be Catholic and I didn't even know that. But anyway.
It's so crazy how many people I meet online who are lapsed Catholics or used to be Catholic or whatever.
Yeah. That's what Twitter will do to you. I'm kidding. I don't use Twitter because I'm not insane. All right. So when it comes to Steven Crowder, right, and how he was acting on the video and with the woman in question, or his wife, or his ex-wife, whatever, Hillary. Yeah. I don't think that she acted in a way that's uniquely inappropriate that would warrant an annulment or anything like that, or any kind of reasoning. When we're talking about the relationship and whether or not he was abusive, how much, what are you using to come to the conclusion that he wasn't? Because I'm primarily looking at a piece of footage and I'm looking at the context surrounding that piece of footage. I'm not looking, as you previously mentioned, 2 years later as the given thing. I'm looking at that given in what those people have information of at that time. Was it abusive? And the conclusion that I'm coming to, and it seems like some other people, is we just don't know. We don't have enough information. I will say, personally though, I will stake a hard claim, and then this is where perhaps we can have some back and forth. I think it is abusive at the end when he says, like, what was it?
I'll fuck you up.
Yeah, I'll fuck you up. I think that is a pretty abusive thing to say to somebody who's expressed, fear for being, or sorry, not, probably shouldn't say fear, but like, kind of like emotional distress, that they want to leave the situation, right? They want to leave the area. Like if I was in a relationship with somebody and they're like, hey, look, I just want to go, I just want to do whatever. If I say I'm going to fuck you up, I feel like that's pretty hard to argue that's not abusive, isn't it?
Well, okay, I think with the whole video, you can claim that one or two or both of these things are abusive. Either the content of what he's saying or the tone of in which he says it. Okay, now the content of what he's saying, I'm pretty sure some people can say like you shouldn't tell your wife that she should do her wifely duties. Okay, but they are traditional Christians, so it's not abusive.
Yeah,
the content of what he's saying is not abusive.
Sure. Well, of that given statement, sure.
Okay, well, he says things like, you don't show me love through your actions. You should act in a way that's worthy of being called a wife.
Yep.
And I don't think that's abusive to say.
I agree with you. It's not abusive to say in the context of the relationship that they both agreed to, which is a conservative marriage. I don't disagree with you on that. What I'm talking primarily about is, number one, the like, I'll fuck you up. And then like the watch it thing is really right in the line. I can theory craft a couple ways that the watch it thing could not or might not be abusive, but they are rather slim compared to like things that would be abusive. I feel like if you're telling your partner, watch it, I feel like that's kind of like, what is implied there? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do understand how it looks like that, but I think, the watch it thing, I completely sympathize with him, because this was my reasoning. If you're married to somebody and they say, you are abusing me and it's sick, you're crossing a line there where the trust is now broken, because you're saying to your spouse, like, I don't trust you. I'm calling this abuse. I'm not saying we're having a disagreement. I'm calling you an abuser. And the whole video starts with him saying, I draw the line at abuse. So I think what he's saying is, you shouldn't say that unless you mean it, because you're breaking the trust in our relationship. If you call me an abuser and we're just having a disagreement, then you're saying you're going to go somewhere that it's crossing a line of trust in a relationship.
So I agree that it is it is removing the ability for the other partner to have like a stupid remark. So like, for instance, if I'm in a relationship with somebody and they do something that I consider to be potentially abusive and I call it abuse, what it says is that you did this maliciously or with intent. Whereas like maybe they did it by mistake, maybe they did whatever. So it is pointingly saying like, no, you did this intentionally and maliciously. It is pointing that. But your response to that should be different. And I believe also in your response to that, you can be abusive. I think, for instance, if somebody said, you're abusive, and I said, no, I'm not. And I like, for instance, absolute classic, block the door and prevent them from leaving the room until I'm done. That is abusive. So you can be abusive in response to people claiming you're abusive. You know what I'm saying? And I think
you can be abusive, and of course there can be codependent abusive relationships, but I just think I guess what I would say overall is he doesn't appear to me to be like a controlling or manipulative or a malevolent person in this conversation. You could say he's frustrated, but he's not really yelling at her. He has a frustrated tone. But I'd just say overall, if you look at his overall demeanor, he wants to continue the conversation. He's warning her about crossing the line of trust in their relationship, but he's not trying to hurt her. And he even says to me, which makes me very sympathetic towards him, he says, Hillary, you give up so easily, right? Mm-hmm. Which seems to indicate to me that he wants to, he's not trying to put her down. He's trying to say, like, look, there's an issue, but we can work through it.
I think
I just don't see how that comes off as abusive. You could say calling her abusive, that's a stretch. Maybe. I think you could say she's abusing him without being aware of it. But to say that that is abuse from him, I just don't see it. I just don't see it.
What do you think about the car? Like, why they only have one? Yeah, why they only have one car?
I think that's I don't really, like, it's a situation with so much context missing that we have no idea. Like, maybe there are other cars in the shop, or, I mean, maybe they've been married for 9 years and they only ever wanted one car and it worked for them. But I think that the context of the situation, if you include the fact that in that video she herself says she fled the home, then when he says you're going to take the car and leave me here, he's not talking about an hour's trip to the grocery store. He's saying, like, you're taking the car and leaving. So I don't think it's unreasonable for him to say that.
What do you mean? Wait, how do you know he's saying you're taking the car and leaving? Because the implication that I got during that conversation was that the reason why he had an issue with her taking the car is because she was taking the car for an indescript amount of time. So she said, I'll be back when I'll be back. And then he was like, well, I might have to do stuff. I might have to do whatever. And that was it. So is that what you mean when you say she's leaving?
Well, I think that was a conversation where she was planning to leave for an indeterminate amount of time. Like, leave, like, get space from him, like, leave the house. Yep. It's not about groceries.
Yeah, it's not just about groceries, correct.
Right. So what do you mean? Like,
okay, sorry. When you said leave me, it implied to me at least that you were saying, like, leave him, like, and, like, go to, like, fucking New Mexico or something. Like, when that's what.
I just mean leave, like, leave the house. I don't mean, like, go far, far away. But do you think it's abusive for him to say, like, well, we're married, you can't just take my car? Like, he has a career that he needs a car for, like, obviously.
I'm
just leave and say, I'll be back when I'm back.
Yeah, I don't think that her taking the car and saying, I'll be back when I'm back is, like, necessarily good. But in the scenario given, like, somebody needs space from you, your partner needs space from you, and you're a multimillionaire, get an Uber or something like that, or literally go buy another car. He could literally go buy another car that hour if he wanted one. He might be able to DoorDash a car if he could, like, there's probably a service that would do it for him, right? Like, there's different ways to be able to go about it. Obviously, that's not practical, but you know what I'm talking about. I feel like where there's a will, there's got to be a way for, especially somebody with that much cash and clout. Like,
unfair to people with money, because, like, just because you have money that could potentially solve a problem a certain way, like, everybody's saying, like, well, why doesn't he have, like, 5 cars? He has enough money to have it. Okay, well, people make decisions for certain reasons. He may not want to spend, like, I don't know, obviously we don't know about the car enough to say, like, do they only have one car and they're both good with that or whatever, but, like,
yeah, true.
Like, people say, oh, she didn't want to feed the dog its medicine. Well, they have enough money to hire a maid to feed the dog its medicine and take the dogs for a walk. Okay, that's true, but that doesn't mean he should do that.
Well,
the wife of a wealthy man is not just window dressing. She has responsibilities, too, that she should be held accountable for, just like everybody else.
Sure. And some of those responsibilities, it seems like, inside of their marriage was, like, possibly, like, feeding the dogs and walking the dogs. I don't necessarily think that there's, like, a rule where you only have one car in any kind of traditional relationship I've ever heard of. Like, it makes sense to me inside of a traditional. Yeah, okay, it makes sense to me inside of a traditional relationship that, you know, possibly one of the parties might walk the dog and feed the dog. If I had to generally guess, I would assume it would be the man's responsibility, not as much the woman's responsibility. But like usually it is a gendered responsibility, some of these various different things. So that makes sense. But like only having one car, that's like, I agree we can't ascertain why they only have one car, but with them only having one car and like this being the stakes, I feel like the most considerate response for your wife, you know, all things considered, is to let her take the car. And if you really need it, you can get an Uber. You could get an Uber X or whatever, the luxury thing, or I think it's an X or Uber Black or whatever. You can fix that problem through a multitude of ways. That's part of the reason why that money exists, is to make your life and your wife's life easier. And I think that kind of pertains closer to the idea of like, that this is ambiguous, right? It's not that he wasn't abusive, it's that we don't really know, right? Like, I don't know how you're drawing such a strong claim.
Well, because, I mean, I understand we're just going from the video, but like, if you include the context that he was going in for a major chest surgery a few days after this video was taken, him saying, so you're just gonna take the car and leave me here. It's not even so much about them having one car. I think it's about like, so you're leaving and you're not telling me when you're going to be back. A couple complications afterwards. So like, it was serious. I mean, does he not warranted to show like, I honestly think he's like pleading with her, like, Hillary, don't give up. Like, don't walk out on me now. You're giving birth to our twins soon. I'm going in for surgery. He doesn't say that. But like,
I feel like there's a lot of reading between the lines here.
But I just don't see him from what I read from his emotions, I see him being frustrated, but I also see him kind of saying like, come on, don't you see what you're doing to me? You're boxing me in, you're just gonna leave me here? I don't see him like trying to hurt her, and he's continuing to pursue the conversation, and seems like she's shut down.
Okay, it's not about him trying to hurt her, because my position isn't that like he was obviously abusive. My position is that I believe that you're slightly in the wrong for saying that he wasn't abusive, because you're making another affirmative claim, but you're making an affirmative claim towards the idea that he wasn't abusive. I think the claim should again be that we just don't know. And I want to stick to the idea primarily around, the watch it, and the I'm gonna fuck you up, because I don't see a circumstance where anybody can say I'm gonna fuck you up to their wife when they're trying to like say that they need space. That's like not potentially abusive, unless he came out and he said that like, I don't know, she was like gonna fight him or like had a knife or something.
Okay. Yeah, I can say something about that. So I understand that most of the time when you say I'm gonna fuck you up, it means like I'm gonna physically fuck you up, but you can also say it in another context. And obviously the conversation continued once they entered the house, right? Like he was continuing to talk to her. So that's a very cherry-picked quote of I'm gonna fuck you up. They obviously continued talking, and then first of all, there's never been any physical abuse that's claimed on either side, and secondly, he let her leave. He didn't even stop her. He didn't even try to stop her. He let her leave.
So let's say you're
a physical threat.
Let's say you're inside of a relationship with somebody that consistently makes, I'm not saying this happened, but let's say you're in a relationship with somebody who consistently makes remarks like, I'm going to fuck you up, and gets really flared up or fired up. We
don't even know that he said that. We don't know for sure. That's from her. She says he says that. There's no evidence of that.
I thought there was okay. Maybe. I thought it was undisputed. I thought he said that he said that. I thought he admitted it.
She said by his own admission, he's never admitted it. She said at the end of that video, it's obviously from her because it's only the two of them in that house. So either
No. I'm not saying I thought that he had said it and she had heard it. I thought that he had admitted that he said that.
Right, but she said that he admitted. He never said it. He has never admitted it. She said he admitted it.
Can somebody link if they know what I'm talking about, can somebody link it so I can pull it up? I thought he completely independently inside of an interview said, yes, or inside of some, maybe it was a text or something. I don't remember what it was. I thought he completely independently said, yes, this happened. My Discord, not yours.
Well, there was a text box at the end of that video where somebody claims that Hillary fled the home and that he said, "I'm gonna fuck you up," after they went inside. Now, if he did say that, only 2 people would know he said that, because only 2 people were there, him and Hillary. So he never said that publicly, that he said that. So it must be her. She, in that video at the end of there, says he, by his own admission. He may have admitted it or he may not have, but it's from her. There is no public admission.
Has he ever disputed the claim?
Well, he says that, there was a video dropped there was an article dropped that was full of lies. I'm pretty sure he did say that. But has he publicly disputed that? No.
Don't you feel like that would probably be something that you would dispute if it was false?
Well, I mean, that entire article by Yashar Ali, who is a scumbag who has, scammed women out of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and, he lived with Kathy Griffin as her, assistant for a couple years, and she felt, scared to ask him to leave her own home. He is a classic scumbag journalist, the worst of the worst. But that article is full of lies. For instance, he says that Steven Crowder chose not to be there for the birth of his twins. That's not true. He was going in for surgery because his lung filled with fluid after the chest surgery. It was a complication. He did not choose to not be there for the birth of his twins. That is a complete lie.
Mine just were not yours. That's not what I was asking. It was when it comes to the disputing of the claim, did he not do it?
Well, you said, wouldn't he dispute that if that's a lie? And the whole article is full of lies. So, I don't know. It's a pretty big lie to say you chose to not be there for the birth of your kids.
Yeah, and he disputed that. Yeah, he did.
No,
he said did he not say I was getting surgery?
No, he said that in the past when he had surgery, but he hasn't come out and clarified it since then. People just have put it together.
Oh, I thought at one point he had made a public statement saying that he had done that. My bad.
Well, he did say he was going in for surgery when he did, but not recently. He hasn't clarified it. No.
Okay. But I thought he had made a public statement that he was in for surgery and that's the reason why he had done it.
I don't believe he has. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
Okay. Well, let's assume that he didn't make a public statement. I feel like it would be pretty important to be able to address some of these things,
Yeah, well, I don't think he's addressing them because I think he's still white knighting for his wife. Or ex-wife.
Oh, there's no way.
What?
There's no way you think he's white knighting for his wife.
Oh, he absolutely is. She's attacking him publicly, and he still says, please do not come after Hillary.
Wait, Okay.
Publicly attacking him. She's releasing tapes to a scumbag journalist to try to ruin the name of the father of her kids.
So, how do you think it would go if he didn't say these things? Because what I'm seeing him trying to possibly, it's completely, I'd be willing to break bread on the idea we don't know what he's doing, but almost certainly is he not, white knighting for his wife. Because in my opinion, what we can clearly see is that he is trying to play into the I'm a father, we can still make this work, family dynamic situation. That's what he's trying to do. So when he's saying don't come after my wife, don't come after this, he's possibly doing it. Maybe he genuinely wants to put his family back together, but white knighting implies some level of over charitability or protecting of the other party. And when he says don't come after my wife, Hillary, I don't think he's doing that explicitly to be yeah, don't come after my wife. It's more of playing into that role. And I would be perfectly...
He's saying it insincerely? Is that what you're saying? He's trying to play the noble man role, but he's not saying it sincerely?
Yeah, absolutely. After coming after... If I'm a conservative and I talk about how my wife is leaving me and going to make our children unhappy and potentially fuck over our children's future, and then I later go, but don't come after my wife, what is that, man? Come on. Like, you're not white knighting your wife. Like, if he wanted to white knight his wife, he would just be like, I'm confused. I don't know what's happening. I just want Hillary to talk to me. We can work this out. That's what he would do, right? He wouldn't be like, yeah, my wife, yeah, it's her fault. This marriage is coming apart. You guys know how important marriage is to raising kids. Our kids are really important. It's not their fault. It's my wife's. Like, it's I feel like it's pretty obvious how the PR
Can you see it
works
from
there.
his perspective? They both agreed that they would not do this. They both agreed that they agreed to a Christian marriage till death do us part. She betrayed, from his perspective, she is betraying that promise. So she is choosing to do this. Now, I don't think she's choosing to do it. I think she clearly has issues. I don't think she's choosing, and she's just choosing to be malignant. But I do think it's evil to try to bring down the father of your children, to try to destroy his career by leaking stuff and telling lies to a scumbag journalist to try to wreck his career and name. I do think that's wrong.
Can we start with which statement she's made that's a lie?
Okay, well, it's not quite her, but her family makes a statement. Okay, who is this family? How do we know it's not just her? Somebody should be held to account for making these allegations in the family statement.
Okay, what did the family statement say that was a lie?
They said he cut her off financially. There's no evidence for that.
Hold on.
Twins.
Wait, let's stop right there, okay? Because lack of evidence doesn't mean the opposite is true. So you said that their claim was that she got cut off financially, but
it is a lie. She fled the house, according to her own words.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He went and bought a townhouse and let her move back into their old house. How is that cutting her off financially? He got out of there so she could live there.
So do you have the timeline of when they said that he cut her off financially?
It's in the statement.
Yeah, in the statement, I believe they just said that she had got cut off financially. I don't think they gave a specific date.
No, they didn't give a specific date. But I mean, how is letting your wife live in the house you bought to live in together? How is letting her live back there and getting yourself a separate place? How is that financial abuse?
We just don't know.
How's that cutting somebody off financially?
We don't know. It could be that she had legal dominion over being inside of that house because, like, I think legally she does. I think if Crowder tries to call the police and tell the police, hey, get my wife out of that property, they just go, no, it's legally her property too. So I don't think, even if he was trying to, with all of his best intent, to cut her off financially, I think that she could legally stay in that house, number one. Number two.
I agree. It's both of their property, but he left for her. He didn't have to leave either. She couldn't get him out of that house if she wanted to.
Okay, but this doesn't pertain at all to the argument of, like, financial abuse, no? Or financial withholding. Because if he's in the same house doesn't mean that, like, he's going to... If he stayed in that house, that doesn't mean that he's not financially abusing her or financially withholding of her, and then neither does the opposite.
But they both had the right to stay in that house, right? That's their common property. And he decided, okay, she doesn't want to be with me. I'll get my own place, and she can stay in that house. I mean, I'm just saying that's evidence that he's not cutting her off financially.
That is no evidence at all. That doesn't pertain to it at all. Because let's assume a reality where Steven Crowder was doing everything in his power to financially cut off his wife. He can't prevent her from being in that property. He can't do it legally. The cops show up and they're like, hey, this is your wife. She has legal right to be here. And the fact that she's pregnant, they'd probably side with her fast. They'd be like, yeah, dude, you need to fucking chill the fuck out before she makes a domestic violence call. That's probably how that shit would go. She has absolute legal authority to be on that property. So I don't know.
Agreed.
So if that is the case, you cannot use the fact that she was allowed to stay in a house that was both of theirs as evidence that Steven Crowder didn't financially or withhold finances from her, because she was legally allowed to be in there, even if he was the most malicious person in the world from withholding.
I see what you're saying.
So yeah, what you need to show me is like a pool of money that he said, here, have pregnant wife. That's what you need to show me.
Okay, I do understand what you're saying, but what I'm trying to make, the point I'm trying to make is that he was generous towards her. Like, not even, like, did he not cut her off? He said, okay, you don't, like, he has every legal right to be in that house too, but he said, okay, you don't want to be around me, I'll go get my own place.
Well, no,
I'm not going to force you to be around me. He spent his own money on his own place.
That's not even necessarily the case, because there's multiple different things that could go wrong there. One, they could just be bickering endlessly, and it could be like his problem as well, and just like, hey man, I want to get some fucking sleep, so he went to a separate place. It could have been like that.
He bought
a
townhouse.
He bought a house, but he couldn't buy a car. Wow. But anyway, like, you know, he went to a separate place. He got that spot, and he tried to be there. We don't know why. It could have been because he just couldn't stand being around her. Or it could have been because, like, he genuinely was generous towards his wife and giving her space and shit like that. That's possible, right? We don't know. Right. So again, I don't know why you're saying it is evidence that he wasn't financially or withholding finances. I don't know where you're getting that. There is no evidence of that I know of.
Well, it's a claim that his ex-wife's family makes in this slanderous article to this journalist. They also, so we don't even know if it's true at all that he cut her off financially, but I'm just saying, from what I've seen, I don't see there being evidence for him cutting her off. That's what I'm saying.
But if there's any group of people that probably have that information, would it not be the family of the spouse?
So why didn't they include it?
Well, maybe they're type because they in the documentation that I'm sure you read, the even in the thing that you read, and even if I agree with you that it's slanderous or whatever, they talk about how they're trying to get all of the like legal documentation like ready and stuff like that. Maybe they have some documents that are like able to show this, but they're still collecting more information or something like that. I don't know. You don't know. We don't know. But the spouse in them know. I don't. Whether or not it may or may not exist. And with that being the case, we can't make an assertion, right? We can just say, hey, we don't know if it's a lie because you're claiming it's a lie. We don't know if it's a lie, right? We don't have that info. So at least on that point, do you agree that it's... Yes, exactly.
I don't know if it's a lie.
So when you said earlier... Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if it's a lie. I'm just using common sense here and saying there are other lies in the article that are clearly provable. And this is a slanderous article, and from what I've seen of his character, I don't believe he would... Where is the evidence of her being, like, penniless and on the streets? I don't think he would try to hurt the mother of his children in that way. I do not think so. I think he's a generous man. I think he didn't realize she was going to do this to him, and he didn't think she was going to attack him publicly. He got fucked.
So I think that you can say that. So I don't know what exactly you're pointing to when you're talking about this article being slanderous in its entirety and stuff like that. I don't want to necessarily defend the article itself, but I do want to again talk about the so let's make a separate claim. Instead of me stating what I found to be questionable, let's assume everything in the video has no abusive leanings, right? Of any kind. Mm-hmm. How are you even able to, from there, say that he wasn't abusive? Again, you should only be able to say that you don't know whether or not he's abusive.
Okay, wait, I'm trying to understand the hypothetical. So if we both say that that he's not being abusive in the video.
Yeah, like the video doesn't, more specifically, that the video doesn't, it's like ambiguous. We don't know. It's just like whatever context. Because I'm assuming you would agree that there isn't something inside of the video that's a silver bullet that says that Steven Crowder cannot be abusive, like a golden ticket that says he is physically immune to being abusive, right?
Sure. I'm not
okay. Yeah, exactly. So with that being the case, if we look at the full context of it and are like, just like, hey, none of this is necessarily abusive, how do you get to the position that he isn't abusive? Like, context can change whether or not something is abusive or isn't abusive. So how do you know with absolute certainty? The context does not make it abusive.
Well, of course I don't. I mean, you could say that about anything. You could see a man being super nice to his wife, and you could say, well, how do you know he's not abusive?
True.
And I could say, well, I don't know he's not abusive. But I bet Destiny $5,000 that there would be no evidence that came out that proved that he was an abuser. I just think, based on all of the context and his character, of course I don't know for certain, but I don't see any evidence of him being abusive. I just don't.
Okay, that's great. That should only get you to the point of you don't see any evidence that he is abusive, not that he isn't abusive. Do you understand there's a difference there? That's my camp is I see no evidence that damns him as an abuser, right? I see no evidence that says like this guy is for sure an abuser. You're saying I see no
logic, you could never say that anybody is one thing or the other. You could just say, well, I don't know, but I won't call them.
Well, so I know what you're talking about. I would say you need a little bit more evidence than a 3-minute video. That's what I would say. You need a little bit more evidence than a 3-minute video and some dude who smiles and looks pretty for a podcast. I think that's what you need a little bit more of, right?
I don't even agree with Steven Crowder politically. I think he's kind of a douchebag sometimes, and I don't, I thought he was funnier earlier, but I don't even necessarily agree with him. I'm just saying from what I've seen, I would be willing to bet $5,000 that he's a good guy and that he's not an abuser.
Sure,
I would.
That's fine, but that's a weaker claim even than he's not an abuser, right? Because you should be willing to bet your house, right? You should be willing to bet your future earnings if you know, because you're making a definite claim. I know he's not an abuser. I don't know. I can make a claim, right? I actually might go at you on that $5,000. I don't want to roll 5,000, maybe 500, but listen, but I don't know, right? I don't know, and I don't think you know either. Getting from the position, because you can't get to the position where you know he's not an abuser. There's nothing for it, because you need that golden ticket. It's only a 3-minute video, and then you have like his podcast to go off.
What would prove to you that he's not an abuser?
Probably
say he's not an abuser.
Probably a pretty consistent. Some text messages that show that the context of this conversation was extremely unorthodox, once in a blue moon kind of a thing. Typically, he's very consistent with his emotion, his demeanor being very calm and understanding. And this from multiple different people as well who are extremely close to him and know his inner, how he works like as a person. Even some potentially people that like were around him and then maybe grew apart from him. More leaked footage, maybe some legal documents that show that he stuck his neck out for his wife inside of critical argument times, like matching up the dates of certain text messages, big arguments with him sticking his neck out financially and emotionally for his wife. Things like that is what I would need to be able to do it. I am never, because I want to reserve the term and the idea of being an abuser for extremely serious circumstances and use it very cautiously. And so I'm never going to say this person isn't an abuser or is either based on a 3-minute video. That's almost never going to happen unless somebody's like stabbing another person. And even still, like maybe it's in self-defense or something like that, right? Like I don't want to have like a crazy situation in my hands.
Well, here's a question for you. What about his wife? I would say she is displaying signs of abuse.
Do you agree that he is displaying signs of abuse?
No.
Okay, then no, I don't agree.
Okay, well, I would say he's genuinely coming at the conversation from a frustrated place. Granted, but you can be frustrated. That's not abusive at all to be frustrated. She's shutting down the conversation. Here's what I ask people. If this was flipped around and it was him saying to her, Hillary, and she was going in for chest surgery, right? Let's just say. And he said to her, Hillary, I'm not doing this. No, I'm leaving and I'll be back when I'm back. Everybody would say, well, that's abusive. If he just kept saying her name, talking down to her.
I think you might. Yeah, I think you might have some lefties that absolutely agree with that. But I'm not one of them. So what I'm going to say is that the public's opinion on that isn't relevant to me because I don't view that the same way, even though I might agree with you. I think if I had a partner and I was saying, I'm going to take the car and I'm going to, do this and I'm going to do that, I think a lot of people might consider that in that way. That's not relevant to our conversation. What's relevant to our conversation is what happened and not necessarily the public's hypocrisy. Because if we agree on this, then it's just between me and you and what we think actually happened. So from your point of view, then,
Sure, I agree. But the court of public opinion is that's what got OJ released. So whatever, it's
we can agree.
The bandwagon fallacy is a fallacy for a reason.
Yeah,
I agree.
for sure. But that's, we're talking about whether or not somebody is an abuser, not whether or not he's perceived as one, right? Or could be perceived as one. Mm-hmm. What would it take for you to believe that Steven Crowder was abusive in that video?
Well, I have seen abusive behavior firsthand. I would say purposefully trying to hurt somebody without the intention of helping, trying to put somebody down to feel better about yourself. Let me see. I mean, there's this classic abuse, gaslighting, I would say. I mean, that's tricky to determine, but there can be genuine gaslighting. Like, if she said something and then he said, you didn't say that, and it trick her and make her think reality, I would say that's abuse. Those are some things I would say that would be abusive.
Okay, I guess.
I mean, we're talking about emotional abuse here. I mean, nobody's obviously physical abuse is a certain thing, but that's not even we're not even that ballpark.
So let's say that the I'm gonna fuck you up comment came while at the very end of the video and in the context of that video, it was caught on the camera and it was just at the very end of it. Would that be abusive?
Well, not necessarily, because I understand you could say mental gymnastics, but just hear me out. So if she's saying I'm leaving, I'll be back when I'm back, I'm asserting control, I'm leaving you before you're having surgery, and I'm calling you an abuser, I think he could say okay, you're gonna threaten me, I'm threatening you. You're threatening me, you're saying I'm leaving and you're an abuser, and he was right to suspect that she was gonna divorce him because she did. Then I could understand him saying, I'll fuck you up for doing this because we made an agreement. I don't think he's saying physically. I think we can rule that out. Obviously, he's not a physically abusive person, but I think you can say
somebody who hasn't had a history of physical abuse absolutely can consistently threaten physical abuse. That's not unheard of, and it's actually rather well understood that that's a thing that people do. They threaten. Good.
Well, I just don't see that from him. I understand that you can try to control somebody by physically threatening them, but I don't see any indication that she's physically afraid of him. She walks closer to him. She walks right by him. He doesn't touch her. She doesn't act like she's not hand shy or anything. I know he didn't, but I've seen people who are at least acting like they're afraid of somebody. She does not act like that. She's not afraid of him physically. If he had been physically threatening her, she would be
even if I grant that she isn't physically afraid of him, she could. Do you agree that there's an idea of emotional abuse that could be present inside of that dynamic? I'm gonna fuck you up. To what end is he saying I'm gonna fuck you up to his wife?
If you're gonna threaten me and leave me, then I'll fuck you up. I'll fuck you up in court. I'll fuck you up.
Whoa.
Whatever.
Not physically, but no. I don't think that court was on his mind there. I think we could reasonably say that he's not saying I'm gonna fuck you up in the court of public opinion there. I feel his whole.
In the court of public opinion.
Sorry, it's kind of a dank meme for chat, but inside of court. I don't think that's the idea that she had in her mind, right? And even if I do grant that was the case, I would say, at bare minimum, then that would be like mutually abusive, and then he's still abusive. Like, if what you're saying is when she was doing all of that shit, what she was saying is, I'm gonna fucking divorce you, I'm gonna be like try and fucking paint you as the worst person in the world in public, and from your perspective, like in your mind, you know, he isn't, and shit like that, I'm gonna do all of this stuff, that would be abusive, right? But his response of, I'm gonna fuck you up with as little information as he had, is also abusive. Because you can't just go like, hey, she's saying that, like, what is it, like, this is abusive, I don't want to have to do this shit, I need space, and then his response, I'm gonna fuck you up, be like, oh well, he's fine, and but she's in the wrong. That doesn't make sense to me. I would feel like they would just both be in the wrong.
You know, I'm not saying he's perfect in any way. Maybe he got frustrated. I'm sure if he did say that he regrets saying that, because, you know, I'm sure he doesn't like swearing at his wife, and I'm sure he would regret saying something like that. But the question is whether you think that a woman can say, I love you, I'm committed to you, but I need some space, and have it be manipulative, or whether it's sincere. I think it's clearly manipulative in this case. I don't think she's necessarily means to do this, but she is not respecting him as a partner. She's saying, I'm leaving.
So let me make a little bit stronger claims now. Consistently throughout this conversation, you have attributed intentions to the wife. All right? And I felt like what we were doing and what we had agreed on pretty distinctly was that we don't know these people's intentions because we don't have the context for their relationship. So it feels really weird when you're attributing especially negative or malicious intentions to the wife, but you refuse vehemently to do so to Steven Crowder. And it comes off.
Negative intention. Well, I'm not saying negative intent. When did I say? I just said I don't think she knows what she's doing. I'm not saying she's choosing to do this to hurt him.
Did you not say that she was manipulative when she... Did you not say it was like manipulative and malicious to frame him as an abuser? And that from Crowder's perspective, it was justified for him to say that he would fuck her up because even from Crowder's perspective, in that moment, he would know, that, armed with the knowledge that she was going to like go out into the world and like make a whole public mess when she said you're being abusive.
Saying he knew she was going to do that. I'm just saying even if he just thinks that she's leaving him 4 days before his surgery and that she's starting to call him an abuser,
leave him for like just a minute to get some air. For like maybe a couple hours.
I'll be back when I'm back.
Yeah,
I think she meant I'm leaving.
No. When you say I'm leaving, I feel like the only context that like that would actually matter to this argument is if she was leaving to New Mexico. If she needs to leave for a couple hours to get some air, the "I'm gonna fuck you up" comment shouldn't even be in the conversation.
But it doesn't make sense if she's only leaving for a couple of hours, because then he says, I can't be with my friends, I can't go to the gym, I can't go to my parents' house.
For a couple of hours.
He can't do all that stuff in a couple of hours. He says, I can't be home, you're gonna leave me here. It doesn't make sense if it's just a couple of hours.
Well, he's saying he can't do any one of those things, is what you can't do.
You're saying he's just writing off a list of things that he might do while she's gone?
Yeah, very, very common. Like if I take the keys to a car or something like that. I feel like
I could see it either way. I could see that. But I'm not. I disagree with you. I'm saying you can be manipulative without realizing that you're being manipulative. I'm not saying that she's like an evil person and he's Jesus Christ. I'm not saying that.
So what? You think she's
not
just
attributing intention to her?
So you think that she's being manipulative unintentionally?
Yes.
Okay.
I think she's freaking out about the situation, and she is hurting him, and it is wrong for her to do that, but she doesn't realize what she's doing, and she's freaking out, and she sees no other option. And I have a lot of sympathy for that.
Even if I were to agree with that still doesn't bring us to the conclusion that he isn't abusive.
Well, I'm sorry. Maybe it's because I'm late, but I just feel like we keep going around in circles, because even if you say you say that I say, what about her behavior? You say that doesn't prove he's not abusive. I say, but okay, considering her behavior and his responses, I don't see any abuse. I don't see him abusing her, meaning abuse, using his relationship with her wrongly in a way that is not fitting to the relationship. I do not see any evidence of that.
So no matter the context, the actions depicted inside of the video cannot be abusive in your mind.
No matter the context. No, the context matters, but the context only, even if I didn't know the context.
Well, you don't know the context for the vast majority of it. Nobody does. It's not public.
Well, with the context I know, but there's some evidence of time, like a timeline and stuff that happened. But even if I didn't know that, when I first watched the video, I didn't even know Steven Crowder, and I remember thinking, I saw it and I heard it, and I was like, oh, I see. This is a guy who is like, he's frustrated in a masculine way, but he's not abusive. But I was just like, I can smell it. People are gonna call this abusive. I had no idea it was him, and I actually had a hard time believing it was him because I was like, oh, I didn't realize he could be like, a man. I kind of thought he would be like, like a fake man, like most conservative men. You know what I mean? But like, I was like,
Sure.
This doesn't sound abusive. This sounds like it's like one of the rare times that I've heard a man hold a woman to account and she's just shutting down and saying, I'm not dealing with it. So as soon as I heard it, I was like, I don't hear abuse. I don't hear him using his relationship with this woman in a way that is wrong or disrespectful to her.
Yeah.
I just don't hear it.
And then so because you don't have, because it's, again, I would really implore you to look into how you're analyzing this, because you're making another claim of he wasn't abusive. It would, I feel like you're making the same mistake, but on the opposite side, where you're stating the guy is not abusive, when you just don't have the evidence for that. You don't know. Like, the context that you have is not sufficient.
To you. I don't have the evidence for that. All I have is I do not have the I don't know the history of their life. I haven't seen every.
Well, it's not even about every argument. I think realistically, we could find evidence pretty easily that could show some kind of abuse. I don't think that it would take a crazy amount. Like, if he has a pattern of behavior of saying, I'm going to fuck you up, and having her, need to leave the house. Or if he has a history of saying, watch it, and implying certain things like that, and then her getting extreme emotional distress, or maybe she has, PTSD or something like that from that, and then there's text messages that show something of the sort, or anything like that. I feel like there's a lot of scenarios in which he could potentially come off as abusive there, or her.
I'm willing to sort of, I don't know everything. I'm just saying from what I've seen and even at first I was like, well, I'm not sure what's going on here, but the more I learn about it, the more that I just think that Hillary is overwhelmed and lashing out, and that Steven is a good man. I just have to say that. I just don't see how that's not true. But I understand something could come out and I'm completely wrong. I just would be absolutely surprised.
So again, you can believe that, but that still doesn't prove that he wasn't abusive in that situation. That still doesn't prove that he was not. It just, what you would...
In their relationship, I can't prove it. No, I cannot
No,
prove
even
it.
Even in that video.
Well, I'm so sorry. Maybe I'm just tired, but we keep circling back.
No. Yeah, because, I think we should wrap this up and be done with this right now.
Honestly, I do, it's I wasn't coming into this with I barely really know you, so but I just happened to come on and hash it out because apparently I'm having a debate about this on Sunday against Destiny and Not So Erudite with me and my dad as debate partners. So that'll be interesting. I appreciate hashing it out with somebody who, you seem fairly neutral, and I understand it's whatever, a weird or I I don't think a lot of people have my take. I'm not trying to be like an edgelord. I really do believe it's true, but like I understand that you're not even like really saying he's abusive. You're just saying it's neutral.
No, we don't know. We don't know if he is. We don't know if she is. We don't know.
Yeah. So, well, I get it. We keep circling back, and maybe I do need to work on my argument because I think I need to make it clear that he is not abusive in that video. But I'm not, I'm just a little bit tired, so.
Yeah. If you're gonna have a conversation with Destiny and not so erudite, I personally, I don't think the statement that you believe he's a good man is gonna do much for you in that conversation. So I would arm yourself with some other things there for that as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's mostly a, I don't know what you would call it. It's not like a logical argument. It's just sort of an emotional argument. Like, I just think, from his character and his personality, I just don't see the abusiveness. I don't. I see frustration. I see masculinity.
Yeah, but when you're making this point, you're making a deductive point. So if you say you're making an emotional argument, I don't think anybody can like take that away from you. But you're using an emotional point to get to a logical deductive end. And that's where like the issues come. Like if I said, it'd be like if I said Donald Trump was right about the election being rigged, and then somebody says like, well, why? And I said, well, I don't know. I think Donald Trump is a good guy, and I don't think he'd lie. I'm using an emotional point to bolster like a claim about that. But okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Great energy.
All right.
It's like 2 a.m. over here. I don't know what time it is for you. Is it 2 a.m. for you?
It's like 11.
Oh, okay. Where do you live? I mean,
I live with Darius, Arizona.
Oh, Arizona. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Thanks for
Thanks
talking.
for having me on. That was fun. Bye.
All right, bye. All right, we're done. I'm ending stream. That lasted way longer than I thought it would. Holy shit. We were supposed to go to the... Oh my god, dude. I literally did the thing, boys. I did the fucking thing. I have a girl over, and she's just sitting there on the fucking bed, like, doing her own fucking shit, dude. I did the thing, but instead of playing video games, I'm fucking debating another woman, dude. Holy shit. Oh my god, this is so cringe. Good lord, man. Oh my god. Dude, and we can't even go out and buy fucking different shit for the goddamn computer, man. Cringe. Maybe this says something? I don't know. Alright, you guys have a good rest of your day. I'm gonna be off. I'm gonna be done. It was a good stream. Much love. Talk to you guys later, yeah?